We are live. It's Joffrey, yeah?
Oh, interesting matchup. When I was looking at these lists, I was finding it hard to decide which way the four would go. Obviously, with two lists each, there's always four games that could happen. And I thought that there was no real advantage to anybody. And therefore, I thought that the default position would be to take Joffrey for his value of holding a token and scoring an extra VP per turn. But I really wasn't sure if that's the way it would go because it's a very interesting matchup and they are two quite different Joffrey lists.
So, we see Joffrey and Kingsguard in both lists. We see the Mountain's Men. No, the Mountain's Men, sorry. The Mountain That Rides in both lists. Very common pickup. But then we see two Lannister guards with guard captains on the side of Deoxys, and Lannister guards with a guard captain. Lannister crossbows with a guard captain on the side of Deoxys. Whereas Ereius runs two poor fellows that are naked, and Mountain's Men with, get this, attachment Daario Naharis. It's rare that you see him in Lannisters, I think.
Now that I see the lists on the table and now that I see them right in front of me and start to consider this specific matchup and give it as much thought as I can, I think that the MVPs here are going to be the crossbowmen. I think their existence is quite significant. And
Definitely.
particularly if they can end up opposite either Joffrey or the Mountain's Men, then they really are going to go to work. They will obviously try and the poor fellows are something of a trap if you think that they're an easy kill. So if the poor fellows get onto the tokens, they're quite powerful. But I think that the crossbowmen will be able to dominate the battlefield because a lot of Darkwing's Dark Words is fought in the center because of how slow units become once they pick up those tokens.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's an interesting. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting one in terms of like the crossbows being able to exert the pressure, but it is also important that High Sparrow list is not being played for Ereius, so those poor fellows do die faster than they would have done if it was something like a High Sparrow list with the reduced damage that they could take. So the crossbows could put in some absolute work early turns with taking swords early, getting these shots off, and just thinning the poor fellows out. So it's not complete dead weight, but I think the guardsmen, if they end up in combat with the guardsmen, the poor fellows are in a world of their own there, and they love it.
Yeah, definitely. The Lannister supremacy will actually really come to help the poor fellows in general, though. People and myself, as a user of poor fellows, they come to assume that they will automatically pass all these tests. Yep. When you combine it with Cersei and the -2 from Lannister supremacy, that can actually suddenly become a failable test. And if poor fellows start taking additional damage beyond just the number of attacks they get hit by, you will find that they will die very quickly. Their real strength is if they can fight a unit one-on-one, their healing will often outdo their opponent's damage. But if you could...
Oh.
And they will start to fall apart.
I think you ever so slightly went there, but yeah, I agree. I think it is going to be a big part of that kind of way to take them out.
I really
before you go,
choices here as well.
We just got a new sub from Sunday Slaughter. Bolton Skincare, I believe is how I know him, who is still one of the best, if not the best username I have ever heard in terms of A Song of Ice and Fire. So thanks a lot, Sunday, for subscribing. If anyone else has got subs they want to put our way, of course, we'd love it. But of course, we're not going to expect it either. Yeah, go on, Carlo. What were you going to say?
There are some relatively significant parts here. I like the fact that they both play Tywin. It will be very important for the use of shutting down the Kingsguard on a significant turn. I think that Varys will have a big play, and he's quite an important tool. But so is Cersei, and it really shouldn't be underestimated. The value that Cersei on crowns can actually have to even entirely killing the Mountain That Rides early on in this game. This, I know, is something that Deoxys will be willing to try because he did it in our game when I played him earlier in the tournament. He managed to kill the Mountain That Rides on a Crown Panic test, and he wasn't even running Cersei then. So I think with the added advantage of Cersei, he will know the value of taking that risk of possibly destroying the Mountain That Rides before combat is even met. And gaining that early activation advantage will really help snowball this game.
Yep. Okay, I'm just dropping the usual things and stuff in chat. Okay, there we go. Making sure everything's sorted and set up. Yes, this is Vanguard. This is not a league game, but this is a Salt on Riverrun game. I am going to be editing the stream ever so slightly. This is going to be who is it again? It's Deoxys, isn't it?
Yeah, Deoxys.
Some people know him as Zenmas as well, so he appears as both.
Yep. Deoxys 2500 or Zemnas 2500 are the two names that he sometimes goes by. And this is a semi-final in the 5-round 32-player Assault on Riverrun tournament with a really high class of players, about half from Australia, but a significant number of players coming from Poland and elsewhere in the world as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say overall, as an average player skill, the average entry is higher than it was here at the NRG TTS League, but obviously only half the size of the tournament and one less round, but still no mean feat to be in the semi-final here. And I think that whoever wins this game will have a really good shot in the last one, because I think that there are more favorable matchups coming next round.
Mm-hmm. Now, unfortunately for me, I played my game the other day and lost in my game. So myself and Carlo were in this tournament. Still are technically, but we both got knocked out round 2, wasn't it?
I was knocked out by Deoxys.
Yeah, I was knocked out by JJ Rockin. He's player you just beat. And then
I have managed to get some other good games in, so I am still hoping to come second in the tournament. It was a narrow defeat to Deoxys. It was 14-12, I believe, off the top of my head. It may have been 10-12. It was a 2-point defeat, and my secondary tiebreakers are as high as they possibly can be. So I've actually managed to, as they sometimes call it, submarine my way into playing in the lower bracket with actually a very good chance of coming second. If you don't know Swiss Draw, then it's something of what's the correct way to put it? A quirk of the system, which is that if you are looking to come second, losing early in the tournament is actually one of the best ways to do it.
Yes, it is, isn't it? The bizarre way that it kind of works.
Yeah.
Okay, so who we got? We got Vanguard and Sunday in the chat there, so we're getting some users filter in. Let me have a little look. Who else is about? It's a weird time to be streaming for us today, isn't it? Because I mean, it's it's very very odd time to be streaming, really.
Middle of the day for us, or otherwise known as the morning for me.
Yeah.
And I guess it's the morning for our US watchers.
It is actually, isn't it? Yeah, it's early morning. So left is going to be Deoxys, and then we've got on the right. So this is going to be Deoxys. What colour is he in? He's in blue, isn't he? He's playing blue.
I think it's significant that that Ereius has had to deploy first. I think choice of first turn is very significant, but I also think it's very important that that Deoxys gets to make sure that his crossbowmen aren't opposite the Mountain That Rides. Quite a key matchup. And also that his Kingsguard can be placed last, so he can choose the matchup there.
Yeah.
I think that the positioning from Gregor mounting that rides by Ereius is slightly odd, unless he intends to come swinging over around the battlefield. I think it was relatively obvious that the Mute NCU objective was Deoxys' main target here, and that he was going to stack this side. Now that he has the crossbowman there, and that the mountain that rides can't threaten them, they can move forward and really dominate both of the objectives on this side. And from deployment, I am strongly leaning towards Deoxys as playing this game out.
Yeah.
Obviously, it will really determine on whether or not they can hold those objectives, whether or not who gets there first is a very important factor in the game. But I would expect to see Deoxys choose first turn here and then probably take horses as his first action. I think that is actually the most interesting play. And I think we might see the Lannister Guardsman on the near side of the table by the style we see. Interesting that the Kingsguard look to not be looking to match up against the Mute NCU, which would change that. But if it stays as is, with the Kingsguard being placed opposite the Mute NCU objective, I would expect to see these guardsmen rush to grab the token before the poor fellows do.
Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting and good recorrection, I would call it, of the positioning by Ereius. I think that he is stacking on the weaker objective side, but maybe he has chosen to not play into such an aggressive fighting style. And now that he's seen the crossbowman go down, he knows that he can't fight on that side of the battlefield. That is a much better positioning than if he had gone for contesting the Mute objective. But I think it's important that the Mute objective is generally considered the most powerful objective token on the board. But that's not to say that a vulnerable and weakened token can't have big value here too.
Yeah.
Seeing this now, it looks very much like the game will be determined by who can get and hold the center objective, because they will presumably both give up the token on the far side of the table. Again, interesting that Ereius looks to be not looking to claim it with Joffrey, whereas Deoxys has very much set up to claim it with Joffrey, therefore scoring 2 points per turn. I still favor Deoxys here. I think that they have chosen to play a slower, less aggressive game because of their asymmetrical deployments, and I expect them not to commit the unit on each of their weak sides here.
Yeah. So we see the first real move of the game. We see Tywin from Deoxys go onto letters and draw some cards, and he's going to drop out a token. What we expect.
If they're not going to play into each other's strong side, rushing to the objective is no longer the most important move in this game, and so letters returns to being de facto a very strong pick. That he takes the panic token onto the mountain means that Cersei onto crowns is becoming a real threat of a real way to kill off the mountain, and looks to be something that he's genuinely setting up for, not just this is a secondary effect, I will take it if I can. He looks to be very aggressively wanting to use that, and we see Varys come down in response to block that exact move.
Yeah, so he's going to make a panic check on one of these units. Are we expecting it on the mountain that rides? Or are we expecting to use it on one of the guards units to?
He could. The guard units is almost useless because of the guard captains, unless you can expect to make them take multiple tests in the turn. All of them have a guard captain. We see. I don't know who he went for, but that won't be a fail for any unit.
We rolled a
the
4.
mountain
So...
that rides, it would have been a fail for the mountain that rides if he had deployed within 6 inches of the corpse pile, but we saw Deoxys measuring that 6 inches. He was very aware that he did not want to be within 6 inches of that because it largely increases his chance of dying.
Yeah, massively.
If he had have deployed the mountain that rides within 6 inches of that deployment zone, of that corpse pile, sorry, and he had just had that test taken on him, he would be dead right now. So it's really important to see that just because it has a low chance of happening doesn't mean that it can't have such a huge impact on the game that it's worth taking that chance.
Yeah, definitely. It's a difficult one, that one. Hello, Eric.
I would expect to see horses used here just to maneuver up the table, or possibly money bags just to block the removal of that panic token.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought we would see the crossbowmen start to develop their position, but it looks like Deoxys is actually wanting to grab the center objective and hold it from the get-go, which I think is a good plan. To have the option there is important. So he places Cersei there. So what he's indicating is that if he goes and takes the token and the mountain that comes and attacks this Lannister Guardsman unit, that Lannister supremacy will be incredibly dangerous to the mountain that rides, because he will be able to pass the test with the guard captain and bounce a -4 test back onto the mountain.
Yeah, that's pretty huge. You don't really want to have to deal with that as the mountain that rides, because that's realistic fail territories.
I would have liked to see him develop the crossbowman instead. That the fact that they can dominate the space would have been a slightly more patient play and would start to dictate the movements of Ereius. And I think that this game is actually going to be a slow affair rather than a very quick and bloody battle.
Yeah, it's not a snatch.
Yeah, exactly. A snatch and run kind of thing, which sometimes Darkwings.words can be. Sorry, Dance with Dragons. I think the center token is interesting. The Sunder and Vicious has some value to the guardsman. Obviously, the D3 wounds can be quite painful, but I don't particularly think that either the mountain's men or the mountain that rides want to hold that token themselves, because it makes them they don't gain a lot from it, but they really hurt from taking those extra wounds. And so we see Deoxys commit to grabbing the center token straight away. He is clearly confident that he can hold it and weather the damage that will come in response. Interesting that he does it on a turn where the tempo, the last activation of the round and first activation of next round will be with Ereius. So I would actually like to have seen him play more for turn 3, but he looks to be pushing combat on turn 2 here.
Yep. It does look like it. Wants to get the game going. I mean, who does this favour if it's a high-scoring game? Not really either player, right? The vulnerable and weakened token, actually, we talk about the mute NCU, but the vulnerable and weakened token might actually be more legit this game.
I do think that there is really good value in it here. Yeah. The weakened is going to much reduce the strength of the crossbowman. The vulnerable can be used on anything really, but mostly the Lannister Guardsman will really allow damage to be pushed through onto this center unit. But the mute NCU can be, depending on, it's a tough decision, depending on whether or not he thinks he wants to hold it for the whole game and can guarantee that he can hold it for the whole game. He could use it on either of the one uses. Tycho and Tywin both have very high use here, very important key parts of Ereius's list. Whereas the more continuous effect of Varys will give like a short-term effect, but it may be better just to force Varys to burn his tokens early in the game and try and hold that token for the entire game, and shut off one of the other two NCUs. I think if you want to go aggressive, you need to shut off Tycho because he is very important to the Kingsguard. If you are looking to be defensive, which I think he should be if he's looking to hold this objective in the center, then he wants to shut off. Tywin, because Tywin can really force through damage.
Mm-hmm. Definitely agree with all of that. Just thinking here, are we going to see anything else really turn one? Do you think we're going to see this kind of big charge come out from the mountain, or do you think it's going to be relatively slow for the rest of the turn?
Because of Lannister supremacy and the fact that Cersei is there, I would be surprised if we saw a charge from the mountain.
Yeah.
It would not be a guaranteed charge. It would be about a 3+. But I expect to see the mountain's men with Dario set up a good position for next turn. The question will be, will he set up into a position where he's committing to a first activation charge next turn? And can either player get the mountain to charge their opponent's mountain is one of the most important plays that can happen. So they both have to be very, very wary of where their opponent's mountain is. One move we might see is if Deoxys commits his mountain forward, then Ereius will commit his mountain really deep with a movement and then a march. He'll be looking to ignore the guardsman, and he will be looking to hunt down the other mountain as the first activation. It is a realistic opportunity for the mountain to kill himself, his mirror, on the charge.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not a guarantee, though. It can go bad, and if you make that play and you leave your opponent able to counter by taking swords, it will be an uphill struggle.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely agree with that.
So the weakness we see here in Ereius' deployment is that he is struggling to get the Kingsguard onto the token, but he really surely wants them to be scoring 2 points a turn, but because he deployed the poor fellows opposite the token first and then maybe changed his mind on where he was going to place the Kingsguard, he's now not in a position to pick that up easily.
Yeah.
I still think that he wants to kind of recorrect his positioning and pick that token up. There is the part to play, which is that they of course only have 2 movement when they have the token, but I think that they are worth it for the 2 points a turn. I definitely think that the last unit that Ereius should leave to move is the mountain that rides. And I think what we're seeing Deoxys measure the distances at which his opponent's mountain that rides could get to. So he's very aware that he doesn't want his own mountain to be charged. And so he seems aware of that positioning, aware of that movement, and so he's being quite protective with his own mountain. I expect him to not end up in a position which is risky. But really, Ereius' mountain can make a 20-inch move between a 5-inch maneuver, a 10-inch march, and then another 5-inch maneuver at the start of next turn. All of that 20 inches can then be brought into a charge. So as long as he can gain line of sight and a straight line with a 20-inch move, he has the option to make a charge.
Right. Sorry about that, guys. Phone calls.
So really, 26 inches between the two mountain that rides is enough for Ereius to take advantage. of the matchup and make a charge as the first action next round. As long as within 20 inches, he can gain the first line of sight and straight line. But 26 would still be a guaranteed charge.
Do you genuinely think that's what we're going to see from Gregor then?
I think so. I think that Deoxys is aware of it, and I saw him measuring the distances at which Ereius's mountain that rides can achieve, and I think he will play quite defensive and not allow it to happen.
Yeah.
A small misplay in positioning, a small non-appreciation of where it might be, would of course be very quickly pounced upon, though.
Okay. So we see pretty much what we expected, I guess, a little bit, but it looks like it's really favouring Deoxys here now. He's just in a much better position on the left-hand flank on the stream, and he's really kind of sacrificed the right-hand side. He's just going to stick a unit of guardsmen over there to kind of go, you know what, that's what's going to happen. Now, my worry is it does limit the effectiveness of these crossbows.
We say that, but we see the poor fellows walk to within 12 inches of the crossbowmen. So, and more importantly, the crossbowmen have got a target onto the mountain's men. The mountain's men have a high damage output, but it rolls off very quickly. They also don't have brilliant morale. So they are the perfect target for the crossbowmen. Every shot into them will be incredibly painful. And I think it's very important in a matchup like this, particularly if the game is going to go slower, and why I wanted Deoxys to play the game slower. It's very important to be able to threaten to take swords as a aggressive first action in any round. Whereas the person who wants their first action to be a charge loses out in a big way on the tactics board against an opponent who has a ranged unit to take swords first, or in this 3 NCU versus 3 NCU matchup, a first activation charge can be really quite a misplay. Even though the charge is tempting and you want to get in there, you just allow your opponent control of the tactics board. And if the charge doesn't end up being as explosive as you want it to be, it can really... So we see them measuring this 20 inches here. So this is the kind of distance that the mountain can get to. And they are both very, very aware of the move that I'm talking about, which is the mountain being scared of himself.
Yeah. It's an odd one to see. I've not seen a mountain that rides versus mountain that rides in a while, but it really is the who charges wins, right? Almost yes, certainly.
Yeah, almost guaranteed. If it's a non-disordered charge, he will have 4 attacks that hit on a 3, which is not necessarily guaranteed to be 4 hits at a 3+ hit with the rerolls. But if you can just hit a single 6 on any of them, then you're right into the realms of doing 4 wounds with no saves. The only thing that's going to save you there really is Wealth of the Rock while controlling money bags.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, that is a very interesting move by Deoxys. He looks to be offering the charge.
But through the spikes, right?
Not necessarily, because... No, I'm relatively sure that there's a position that Ereius can get to where he will be able to charge without it.
Right.
Between his first maneuver, he will get past the spikes, the maneuver and then march, and then he will be able to maneuver again. He will even be able to charge the mountain in the flank, which means that between a flank charge and a panic token given out, he gives himself a very small other window that if he hasn't done enough wounds with the attack, he could still fail the panic check.
You're talking about the first turn
That's
of
an
activation
interesting move.
Next turn. Yeah. He's not going to be able to charge the flank if he charges it now.
Yeah, I've actually just had a little whisper in my ear that one of the most important cards in this matchup, and may be held by either player, is that Joffrey can block D3 wounds.
That's true.
Could be a bit of a bait play here. Like I say, taking a charge as the first action is, of course, the much weaker play of the round if you don't be as explosive as you think you're going to be. And so if you can set up a play where actually the mountain charges you and fails to kill you, then you can use swords as a counter to kill, make an attack back, which has a okay chance to kill, but more importantly, you're still unactivated, and so can make another swords attack, another attack later in that round, which is an almost guarantee kill. The tactics board play really starts to come in there, and we start to see a flow. It'd be very interesting if we see Ereius move forward. The fact that Deoxys has moved forward makes me believe that he must have the card block. If Ereius goes for it, then his first move needs to be to charge.
Yep.
If he does, I expect to see a swords counter, which would then probably play into a money bags counter if the mountain that rides isn't dead yet.
So,
these are risky plays from both sides.
So thanks for the follow, Easy Keel. I think that's how I pronounce it. Kill with an E in it. Easy Keel. And good morning to you, Grisselog, of course, as well. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's still umming and ahhing about this move.
Yep. Exactly. What's great about this game is, and any dice game, is that we can talk theoreticals here, and you can work on the probability. You can work on the assumption that he has the Joffrey card to block those wounds. But it's a question of, even if you know all of the cards are in hand, even if you know all of the statistics of what is likely to happen, you have to make a choice as a player. What risk am I willing to take? Because you can charge and score because of critical blow. Critical blow. You can score eight wounds that are unsavable.
Yes, you can. You can double
that
kill
would
the mountain.
mean no card is going to save the mountain. You can, of course, charge and score no hits.
That's also fully possible. No hits.
They are both
possible.
Incredibly unlikely events, but there is a gray area between. You could score 6 hits, you could score 2 hits. All of these things will mean whatever card play you were threatening to make now is irrelevant.
Yeah, just so you know, you broke up a little bit there. But it's okay.
I also got disconnected from the game.
All right.
So almost definitely my internet.
Yes. Just making sure we're still live, because it says on my thing that we're not live anymore, which would be awful. No, we are still live. All's good. All's good. It's just the chat here is very odd. It doesn't seems to think we're all disconnected. Anyway. So we see the reset. We see turn play go to Ereius, and it's the first activation. Are they doing any card discards? Doesn't look like there's any cards discarded at the moment. Can't see any from any player. We've yet to have had a full round, and we haven't seen a tactics card played. What else have we got going on? Oh, it looks like he's activating the Mountains Men first. Or he just pinged it.
Do we know which NCU was switched off by the mute NCU objective?
We don't know which one they decided to target. If anyone knows, that would be great to tell us, because certainly they've got no afternoon still, Kyle. It looks like Tywin's been used on the mountain this turn.
He has. That, of course, was another optional counter, which would stop that first activation play and stop him from being able to kill the mountain. Interesting that it has been used now because it is, of course, a one-time effect. And
Boom.
yet Ereius hadn't made an aggressive move, so it felt slightly unnecessary to use it at that point.
It is the
So
start of any turn, though. It is the start of any
it is
turn.
the start of any turn.
He
Yeah,
could have activated the mountain there and done the charge that turn.
he could have, but his positioning meant that he has decided to hide him behind the Kingsguard, meant that he was relatively committed to not doing that.
That is true. That is true.
We may see Deoxys may be looking to be very aggressive with his own mountain that rides, taking them into the Kingsguard. And he may be looking to make sure that he doesn't get countercharged by that.
Why is he rolling 10 dice with the Oh, it's Dario Naharis, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's using Dario Naharis' order. Wow.
He has rolled 0 ones, and he has given himself an incredibly explosive hit here.
That's 8 dead straight away. And that's 1, 2, 3 fails? Because 4s are enough, right? 4 is enough on Guardsman?
They have Sundering.
Yeah. No, they don't have Sundering. They don't have Sundering. 3s are enough.
No Sundering. No Sundering. It is the mountain that gives them the extra Sundering. 3s is the save, which is very important because that's scary because now the guard captain is the only thing that's going to save them. Wow, that's a very big hit, obviously, and means that it basically can't be countered by taking money bags because you would expect to see them still force through enough damage with their next attack.
And that was a
they
6
take
on
4 in
yeah.
return, which is a big rollback.
Fealty to the crown.
Fealty to the crown is huge. That's a huge play. He will heal himself 4 wounds, and now he could take money bags and really go back up to those 2 ranks.
Surely you take swords. Surely you take swords and shoot with the crossbows.
Swords is the blocking play, and luckily for him, the Mountains Men won't do much in return. There are many other good plays here. This is a very aggressive turn.
Could you take Pycelle onto the bags? Give the Mountains Men weakened?
You could, yeah. That's a good option too.
I still
there are a lot of choices right here. The mountain, Deoxys' mountain has some aggressive options. I think the poor fellows charging will do very, very little, so I'm not sure why he wants to measure that kind of charge range.
I understand that measure. I understand that measure a lot. It's if he shoots with the crossbowman and he kills some of the poor fellows will then get the charge, but of course they'll probably pass the morale check. So
and they have a token now.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course. That's interesting. I would have thought that the attack, as weak as it would come into Darius's Mountains Men.
You run the risk of panicking your own unit.
They should be able to shoot into the flank. Of course, yeah, there is. You could either take the guardsman and make a very weak attack, hoping to just score a hit and make him take a panic check in general.
So
you could shoot with the crossbowman, but you risk taking a 6+ because of the weirwood tree morale yourself, which is very dangerous because you leave yourself within range of dying, and that guard captain has obviously already been used, so you want to minimize the number of tests you'll have to be taking there.
So Gruselug points out that there was 1 miss from the Mountains Men, and it's not ones that you roll with Dario, it's misses from Dario's order. So he should have taken 1 wound on the Mountains Men.
Yeah, he should have taken a wound. That's true. We should see 1 wound on 2 extra wound.
Wow. Okay, so we see Joffrey's traitors, I will have their heads, come out. And he panics an enemy unit, and they suffer a panic test. And you see 3 more of the Mountains Men go down.
That is, of course, at the start of any friendly turn. He still has the option to do whatever he wants. I still think that he should block swords here.
He chooses to re-roll that, and he actually goes down from a 2 to a 1, so they get a wound back. If they'd have included the wound from a miss, he'd have been down onto his last rank anyway, and he might not have chosen to re-roll that. That's actually really key. He's basically just given Ereius net 2 extra wounds on his Mountains Men.
Yeah, a net wound change of 2. Or, yeah, exactly. A net wound change of 2. He's used up a panic token, which he would have otherwise had. And it can really change the game. Really small miss sites like that can have a big effect when you're playing these small margins. But we'll see what action he chooses to follow it up with. He obviously has declared nothing at the moment, and it looks like we're going to have the mountain charge them in the front.
Yep.
This will presumably finish the unit off, but that's why he wanted to push through that damage, because he knew that he will get the. He knows that he will get the panic token on the charge from Gregor, and he just wanted to force through as much damage as he can. He is still pretty reliant on either a huge attack roll from the mountain here, or still reliant on a panic check fail. Something that you never particularly want to be reliant on, even if you have good odds.
Yep, I agree with that.
Oh, wow. We see 6 attacks that are hitting on 2s. So I think we will see no reliance on this. This is great use of Joffrey's cards.
Oh, there's
I am not as familiar with Joffrey as with other commanders. He only gets the five wounds, though, so we are still seeing that 1 wound making a huge difference. We'll see whether or not they pass or fail this panic check.
They're outside of the range of the weirwood, so he's just going to roll the panic now. I mean, if these mountains men go down, there's a lot of pressure on Joffrey to do a lot of work.
Yes,
Nope,
that the mountain won't be able to do anything significant this turn from Ereius's side, and that that Joffrey is both required to sort of do a lot of damage and also pick up a token, means that really he's going to need to swing Joffrey into the center and charge into those Lancer Guardsmen.
That's viable though. That's a viable option.
It's a very viable option, and I would like to see it happen. Otherwise, Ereius is going to bleed points and position away. He needs to capitalize on the fact that that guard captain has been used. And interestingly, I actually think that Gregor might be being used here as a speed bump. Oh no, he is retreating away. I wonder if maybe the mountain that rides might have been used to block any charge into the front of the guardsmen. Meaning that any charge from the King's Guard would have to go through the stakes.
Yeah. It's an odd one. See what chat is saying. No misses, though. So no, chat's really quiet today. We've got 10 people watching. But yeah, no, it's fair enough. Yeah, I don't know.
This is a much more aggressive and bloody affair than I thought it would be. A really good use of Joffrey's explosive aggressive cards, which then result in the negative effect of being left with a token, makes attacks in general and activations so much more powerful with the added risk. The risk being here, of course, now that you have a guard unit here who are panicked and have already used their guard captain, so that's quite a key thing. The mountain that rides, despite having no abilities, can still pressure this center unit.
Yep.
And that could be a relatively big counterplay as well. He has enough attacks that you would expect at least a wound to go through and cause a panic check. And every time you roll a panic against a unit with a panic token, you have big odds of getting a fail.
Yeah. It's we're still seeing some thinking coming out from.
What's very interesting is that we've seen a number of aggressive activations go down and nothing on the tactics board yet. I think that a return to a slower play now is to be expected. The plays that I would like to see happen still is possibly taking horses as the action here. I would either like to see the poor fellows take that token, or see the Kingsguard use the maneuver, but the Kingsguard always have the ability to make a free maneuver themselves. But if they can take the maneuver with the horses, then they, of course, can use their banner to do something else, such as gain Sundering and Vicious. I forget exactly.
Yeah,
I'll check
I think
their
it
card,
is.
what their options are. People use the maneuver so often that the others effectively don't get used that much. I don't know
So
if we actually have a
Crit Blow and
banners card
Sundering.
around.
We do on Deoxys' side. It's Crit Blow, Sundering, or Vicious, and Become Panicked.
Yeah, Vicious. So it's either Vicious and Panicked or Crit Blow and Sundering. Either looking to boost your direct attack damage or looking to boost your panic-based damage, or you can go for the tokens, which are vulnerable and weakened.
See, I actually quite like here. I know that the Kingsguard hit on a 2+, and I know they have 8 dice, but I quite like in this situation here. We see, seeing Pycelle come out onto Moneybags maybe, the Moneybags to heal the guardsman up, remove the panic, and drop a weaken token on them. There's a chance you're going to roll some ones, and there's a chance you lessen the damage. And if they're not doing 8 damage, then it requires them for you to fail the panic. Fail the panic check, which is a bit more odds-on in terms of the guardsman staying alive. Whereas right now the guardsmen are probably dead. Let's put it like that.
That's true. I still think one of the most important things is who picks up this token between the poor fellows and the guardsmen. This last token, which is currently available, whoever grabs it, these units don't have, between the very, very high morale of the poor fellows and the guard captain on the Lannister guardsmen, these units don't have much ability to take the token off each other. Whoever grabs it first will hold it for a relatively significant amount of time. But we have to counter that with, there is a real threat that the center objective will switch hands this turn. So being able to do both is very important. That he has healed the guardsman up means that I would like to see Ereius grab the last token.
Oh, Terra back with the Twitch Prime. Good man, Terra. Afternoon. Yeah, so to answer the question in chat, it is a Joffrey mirror. I don't know. I'm stuck with what Ereius should. So we see how we saw the Moneybags come out. We saw Pycelle come out, and look, Pycelle goes weakened on the Kingsguard. Yep. So we are yet to see Eris's choice. He's going for letters. Letters with Tywin.
From a very explosive couple of first activations, suddenly the turn has slowed down and it becomes much more about the tactics board control. I think that, interestingly, Deoxys has use of both swords and crowns right now, whereas Ereius doesn't. So I would like to see him take the crowns and force Ereius into taking the swords in response and having no use for it.
Yeah.
Even if the swords itself would have greater value to him, not having to take another -1 check on these guardsmen with their guard captain used could be a quite significant play.
So I'm just looking at the board now, and my initial thoughts for the next kind of move, if you will, or the most decisive thing I can think of next, is obviously going to be the Kingsguard into where they go. But I think one of the most important ones as well for the end of the turn is going to be who decides to activate the units on the close side first. Is it going to be the guardsmen who take the vulnerable and weakened, or is it going to be the poor fellows? And I think the poor fellows can take the risk of going first. The problem is they might get smashed by the guards unit enough, whereby there's a serious risk that they might die next turn without resources invested. Okay, so we see Cersei come out into the crowns. It's going to be a -1 panic check on the mountain. And I'm guessing Cersei's influence is going on that as well? Is that Dead Mountain?
And we see if we have Cersei there. Oh my God! Well, without Cersei, we see him die. That's the kind of play. That's the kind of play that I was talking about can happen. That panic token really is the kicker there. And yeah, that hurts, Terra. That really does hurt.
That is the mountain that runs away rather than the mountain that rides. God, I hate this game sometimes.
So that is the reason why I'm not. That's the worst part in my mind of the changes to the panic mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
That it becomes so dangerous to relatively high wound, very good morale solos. So that 4 wounds will kill them outright. Means that previously under the old ruling, they would never take more than 3 wounds because they could only ever have their morale reduced to 0, and they would never die from such an effect, and only if you stacked such a huge negative on them.
Yep.
The odds of it happening haven't massively changed. What has changed is that you are now able to take a very low chance roll and make it have a huge significance on the game. And that's really the issue here, is that this panic check fail, which isn't that reliable, we're still only talking that this should only happen roughly something like 1 in 10, even with a panic token. But that 1 in 10 will have a huge effect upon the game.
Yep. And it's interesting you say it's 1 in 10. It's actually, like, if you look at it across all games that have been played, I know it's happened to you, it's happened to your opponents, it's happened in my games as well. The simple fact of the matter is it might only be 1 in 10, but actually if you start to take into account the game, there's going to be a lot of games where he's going to be failing. Because the chances are he's going to be taking maybe 3 or 4 of those tests a game.
Exactly. And if he takes 3 or 4 per game, then
every
then that
3
now
games he
means
dies.
that it's like a 50-50 chance that it will happen in any given game. So yeah, I don't like it. It's interesting. I don't like it against solos, specifically high morale solos. I think that it really weakens Jorah, because Jorah, of course, doesn't have enough wounds to survive the test on any D3 roll. He has slightly worse morale, so it's even more likely to happen. And it just marginalizes his value a lot. And yet, this is a anointed knight. This isn't somebody who should necessarily just run away. So it seems unthematic at the moment.
I mean, I did like the old rules, although I used to run away in droves.
Units are supposed to be almost immune to panic.
Yeah. I used to run away in droves with my free folk in the olden days, and I'm glad that they changed the rules in that sense. But I was also a little bit. I didn't like the idea that you could panic
Interesting
units to death.
that we see.
But yeah. So he's just going to activate the guards and he's not even going to charge the poor fellows. I feel that feels bad. I feel like you could charge the poor fellows and just get rid of their options there. As you can see, Carlo's having a problem with his internet again. So I'll just take over while we wait. The advantage of obviously activations now is hugely in Deoxys' favour.
I think the choice here by Deoxys to not engage with the guardsman is based on him realizing that he's currently ahead in a significant way, and he doesn't need to force anything to happen. Charging into the poor fellows, while it might seem like probably you're at an advantage there, it has a real chance to.
Your internet is absolutely terrible, Carlo. We can barely hear you. You're a robot. It might be my end, but
I'm very sorry.
it's okay.
No, it's probably me.
There we go. So, Sajora the unplay tested. Yes, I mean I love Sajora. I think Sajora's great. So we see we finally see Joffrey decide to do his move, and he is going to charge these guys in the front, and that's going to be a dead unit probably. I mean, not really. You know, the armor on the guards is pretty good. It doesn't look like he used a banner.
I hope he has, because
He hasn't, and it looks like he's hit with all of them.
I really do hope he has used the banner. I think we've seen weakened and vulnerable come down, so I think that he's gone for pushing through the token damage there. Can you hear me any better now?
I can, yeah, I can definitely.
Yeah, good.
It's interesting. So he's gone for that, but he hasn't removed the wound. Ooh, that's that is a 1 health guards unit, which now has to succeed its panic check or it will die. And this guard captain's been an absolute tank for those of you who've been watching so far. He's been surviving everything ever.
It's an interesting choice, and he has managed, and it has worked for him.
Yeah.
I guess you'd have to sit and work out all the probabilities, but I feel that you are always going to need your opponent to fail their panic check. So going for vicious and panicked may well have been the better choice. That, of course, assumes that you think that you can do 4 wounds without the vulnerable token. It's gone well for him. I think that he's relatively lucky to get a kill there when you look at the actual odds.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not actually unreasonable.
It's not at all unreasonable. It's not as likely as the mountain that rides running away.
No.
But yeah, he's gone for a risk there, and he needed to because he's in a bad situation right now. But he's managed to make the most of it. His problem is, though, that he will get shot by the Lance crossbowmen, and they will really start going to town on that unit, I think. The crossbowmen are a great unit to hit them. Now that they're slow, that's a real problem for the Kingsguard to get away. And that's happened with the swords still on the table. We're going to see them get shot twice this round. And I think is a hasty play, considering that he could have just delayed an action and taken Tycho onto swords himself. I think that that's a huge misplay. I wasn't being aware of the tactics board myself at the time, but
I don't like this retreating back.
I think that that's a really, really bad play now that I look at it. Allowing this double shot will massively cost him. And all he had to do was take Tycho onto the swords and delay an extra activation. There was nothing really significant that I thought was going to happen. The unit was holding a token, so they would not have been able to retreat in any significant way and stop you from being able to make that same move.
Is that a classic? Is that a classic Lannister crossbow shot of 4 hits? Reroll 3 hits. From the weakened token. Yeah, I mean, that's a classic. Me and Carlo play the Lannister matchup a lot, and Carlo always shoots me with his crossbows, and he always gets 4 hits. That is a standard that we go by. That's 3 saves. They did not care about that.
He's gotten away with it, but he has had to burn the weakened token, so the next shot will have be a much more threatening prospect. They also are basically now just going to continue to either need to push into the crossbowman, or they can only move 2 inches a turn, and the crossbowman will be able to shift 2 inches a turn every time they shoot, and they will just continue to follow them and shoot them every round. I still think that these crossbowmen are going to be the MVP, and I think that they are really going to go to town on Joffrey here. the way the activation flow is left, the Portfolio's really need to threaten into the crossbowmen, but the response to that is it will allow the Deoxys Kingsguard to charge them.
Yep.
That's a semi-dangerous combat because of the D3+1 wounds that the Portfolios can put out, but you can also do such a high amount of damage with the Kingsguard that I would expect them to be able to force through enough that they can wipe them out quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
Some card play has really allowed Ereius to weather this storm between Weather the Rock here and the token weakened. He has survived these two, so I guess I was overstating how much damage it would do, but over time, this will really come to wear down on Joffrey. He can't be expecting to play Wealth of the Rock and have a weakened token every round, and yet he can be expected to be shot at least once or twice every round. He has failed the panic check in a big way and dropped the token. They seem to be having a lot of trouble using the Kingsguard tray properly, effectively because of the way the banners are considered wounds on the tray. It does not work well with TTS right now. But they should have taken a total of 4 wounds, I believe. D3+1 for the panic that they just failed, and 1 for the shot that they failed. So I think he again has 1 wound too many right now.
Yep.
But there we go. You throw enough dice, you get enough attacks, and you hit a unit enough times, dice rolls will get failed.
Definitely. I mean, that's a free folk motto if I've ever heard one. That is literally what you have to do, unfortunately. And although it might suck, it works quite well, you know. Enough dice, people will fail, as you say.
This game is still very interesting, but it is strongly swinging into Deoxys' favor right now, mostly because of the activation advantage and the fact that dropping the token is huge because it slows his VP gain. I still like Deoxys' choice to not engage the Portfolio's because it's now looking very, very difficult for Ereius to get back into this game. He needs to pick up that token with the Kingsguard, but he cannot get onto that stakes without really dying effectively. And the crossbowmen are really going to control what's going on here.
Yeah.
We see a banner get used, and I'm interested to know if he looks to be protecting the crossbowman by taking a maneuver and then a second maneuver. 2 inches probably, each move.
Yeah.
He's looking to just get some use out of these Kingsguard. He clearly thinks that he has a favorable matchup into the Portfolio's, but really he knows that if he can keep those crossbowmen firing, keep them out of combat, then he's in much the stronger position here.
Could he have just marched to get himself further forward, though?
You can't. You have movement 2 and you can't march.
I can't march with them, and yeah, it's true.
Otherwise, it would make it very strong for cavalry units, particularly because they would be able to maneuver backwards, move 2 inches, then march another 4 inches, and then still turn around to face. They would be running away at 6 inches a turn, which would be really the entire tactic would be a grab and run.
Yeah.
So for me, the most significant plays have been some really good card play by Deoxys. His use of the Joffrey deck has been very, very good. He's known when plays are going to be very impactful on the game and been willing to take the downsides of the card for the upside and the explosive damage that he has.
Yeah.
He's got himself an activation advantage, which is exactly where you want to be against poor fellows, because the poor fellows want to be attacked and then delay their action until later in the round. But of course, he will now be allowed to wait out the poor fellows until they've activated. And it can't be understated how big a role it was that Joffrey dropped that token. The two VPs for holding the objective is one thing, but that it has now fallen onto the stakes means that it's almost entirely out the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not fun at all, actually.
I would expect to see the first activation here from Deoxys to be possibly Pycelle onto the swords is something that I would like to see. That Tywin hasn't been used at the start of this round onto Deoxys' Mountain That Rides tells me that the Mute NCU has been used on Tywin. If not, then Tywin should be blocking the Mountain That Rides right now.
I mean,
because the Mountain That Rides could go in and destroy Joffrey.
He has got all the tokens. So I'm guessing he has been used?
He just picked up all those tokens through the use of Joffrey's cards, I believe.
Right, okay. He's seeing if he can collect the token. He can collect the token without touching the stakes. It does overlap ever so slightly.
A very interesting move and a very good insight.
Yeah, Varys, as far as I'm aware, has done nothing this game, right?
Yes. We don't see any tokens placed on him, so...
Oh, buddy. That's touching. You need to back off. That's not touching right now. Can he pivot to get this nice angle, or will he cross?
I mean, there is a position where he can definitely do it, and like, it's just the difficulty of TTS. There is, without a doubt, somewhere that he can be.
I mean, he should have positioned his center directly over where he wanted to like touch it, and then he pivoted until he hit it.
Yeah,
because he would have actually been able to pivot around in a full circle without touching the stakes.
He can actually do that with his... Oh, he has done it with a maneuver he hasn't even activated.
Yeah.
His center line is still over the stakes, so the Kingsguard would have to charge through the stakes if they wanted to make an attack on him. So that's really looking like a bad spot right now for Ereius. So I think we've seen some mistakes from Ereius. It's hard to know what they exactly are without knowing what things have been muted and what's been used and what's not been used. That, as far as I can tell, Tywin hasn't been used yet, and yet very significant plays have gone on. Tywin should have been used unless he was muted.
But then Tycho
Varys
should have been used.
Has almost never been used, and so he looks like he's been muted. And also Tycho could have made some significant plays, and he has not been used. So he seems to be massively overlooking his NCUs, and against an opponent who's playing close to perfect, like Deoxys is, in a mirror matchup like this, that's going to have a huge knock-on effect, and it's going to cause this waterfall that makes you end up with a lack of activations and just bad board positioning.
Yep. The thing that I'm noticing more from this position now is the activation advantage is obviously not in his favor, and the poor fellows haven't really done anything the whole game. That the one units he really should have been using to win the game, in my opinion. You know, the key pieces were not going to be the poor fellows, but they are key for holding the objectives and getting the board control in a way that you want it, and they've actually done basically nothing.
So this is the conundrum with poor fellows. If you can get them working,
Moneybags to heal
if
the
you can
Kingsguard.
get them taking wounds, healing wounds, having faith tokens, having the ability to do really high damage to units like Kingsguard, they are worth so much more than 5 points. They are an incredibly efficient and incredibly powerful unit. If you cannot start that chain of events, if you cannot get them into the right place and get them being aggressive or holding something valuable, forcing your opponent to be aggressive into you, then they are an absolute lead weight and they are a waste of 10 points. And that's what they're looking like right now.
Yeah. I mean, they've achieved exactly the same as any other 2-point units would have achieved in this game. Or 2 5-point units even.
So we believe that Varys is the one who's turned off, which means that Tycho and Tywin both have plays.
Yeah.
Tycho can still, of course, allow the Kingsguard at some point to make a big play. I think right now he might need to make a really severe play, such as charging the mountain, even though it's onto the stakes, take the stake damage, and then heal with Tycho could be a choice.
Would you not
actually, now that I think about it, taking a banner to maneuver into Gregor's flank is probably a significantly better play now that I think about it. And I would expect to see them, take that move and charge him into his flank where they don't have to take the damage. I think it's interesting that now I think about that Deoxys chose to basically pull the token off of the stakes for Joffrey. And if anything, helped him back into the game.
Grislug, if you wanted to talk poor fellows, Carlo is your man. He would talk about poor fellows until the cows come home.
I regularly use a army with 4 units of poor fellows in. I actually think that if you're playing High Sparrow, which is probably the best place to use him because of his cards allow that extra use, I think that the value of the Champion of the Faith is overstated. I think that actually he's not as important as you think he is.
4
and that
misses.
Kingsguard attachments give you the utility that you really need.
4 misses, Wealth of the Rock comes out and doesn't block the D3. So you see 4 saves coming out onto Gregor. -1.
Still 2+, even with the flank. He makes 4 saves, but he is vulnerable. And he manages to force through no damage, which is, of course, difficult.
Yeah.
And so the important thing, the unfortunate thing, Van, is I think that the more you use, the more valuable they become, because the less chance your opponent has to ignore them in this way. See how Deoxys as a skilled player has completely ignored the poor fellows, but if his whole army was poor fellows, you can't ignore them anymore. And that's when they start to really get their value.
Yes, I know that one all too well. Carlo has often fielded 5 units of poor fellows against my free folk, and it's just sad.
4, sorry, never 5.
I thought you did do 5 once, didn't you?
No.
Before they changed Warrior Sons, didn't they?
Warrior Sons, but I don't.
No, before they changed Warrior Sons.
No, I've never proxied them, and I only own 4.
Oh, right, only. Okay. Fair enough. What did you used to run with them? Because you used to run 4 and something else, and it wasn't Warriors, was it?
I used to run Joffrey in the Kingsguard.
It's Joffrey Kingsguard, that's right.
The list I originally created was a way for me to run Joffrey, but not be scared of the panic tokens, which his cards put out, and the panic tokens which might come when Joffrey dies. That's where the whole list developed from. But I realized that High Sparrow just became a more efficient way to run it in general.
Which is a really sad way of looking at any on-field commander and recognizing that an off-field commander is just better.
We've seen really good use of Joffrey in this game, though. His cards have had a big impact for Deoxys, but not for Ereius so far.
Still passing that panic check. I'm guessing that was on the mountain, because it's the panic's gone on the mountain.
And we see the value here in that the pressure that Joffrey holding a token, scoring 2 a turn has.
Yep.
With the board now filled up, and Joffrey Baratheon already having taken his action, I am seeing very, very few ways for Ereius to not slip to a big points deficit this round. That's
I mean,
a
it's
very interesting maneuver from the guardsman.
Is this because he can just charge Joffrey and he doesn't have to worry about the poor fellows? Because they're just not. They could make a charge, but it's just unreasonable.
Yeah,
He needs to position around. He can't see the Kingsguard if he goes that.
Unless he believes that the mountain won't be there by
The mountain still has to
the time
activate.
he
That's
charges.
true.
But
The mountain can't
yeah,
retreat.
very interesting position. Of the things that he can do, I'm not sure what he's trying to achieve here. The mountain definitely can't retreat now, because if he retreats sideways or forwards, he will go through the stakes and probably die. If he can't retreat backwards because there's no way out of combat now, and his movement is so low that it's very unlikely. He will probably attack into the Kingsguard, as much just to shift his position as anything else. But yeah, the guardsmen aren't helping and are really hindering his ways out.
Yeah, I don't know what that play was. There's probably a good reason, but he can't even see the Kingsguard like that. Like, if he positioned it in a position where he could see the Kingsguard and at least threaten a charge, but right now he can't because his own unit blocks line of sight.
So I think that, again, when we talk about the value of the poor fellows, the trap here would be for the crossbowmen to shoot the poor fellows, but they should really just be taking a maneuver action and shooting into the back of the Kingsguard right now, which is what we see Deoxys do. If you are finding it difficult to play into poor fellows, then really you're seeing what you want to do here. It's very much the same. Poor fellows are literally a poor man's Rose Knights. If you're struggling to play these units, you need to realize that a lot of the time, just because you can attack doesn't mean that you should attack.
I agree with that. I agree with that completely. They're an odd unit to play because they're a bit counter to the way the game should be played. Because you kind of don't want, as you say, you don't really want to have them involved if you're the opponent. But yeah, if you're the Lannister player, you want to get them involved as much as you can and just kind of throw them around a little bit.
Exactly. And what we would like to see here is we would like to see a charge declared. But instead, he just maneuvers. I would like to see him charge into the guardsmen. One of the best things you can do with the poor fellows is take on a charge which you are reasonably likely to fail, and then gain a faith token for having done it. They have Cersei on them, so it makes it the mildest risk that he will both drop the token and kind of put himself in a worse situation. I say worse because he's already in a bad situation. He needs to make something happen.
Yep.
So, so Bloodraven's talking about saying that killing poor fellows is easy. I actually completely disagree. The only way to kill poor fellows is to take multiple activations against them in the time in which they cannot take any heals back. So this requires one of two things. You either need to control activations against them, which means that you need to be out-activating them, but if they're spammed and they're cheap, then that's generally not possible unless you're Starks. Or you need to be able to deny their activation itself. And so really you're talking about a play like Tyrion or something like that. I think that if you think poor fellows are easy to beat, you've never played somebody who knew how to control their activation count properly, or who knew the timing on when to use High Sparrow cards.
I mean, the other thing is, of course, if you're playing armies with things like Crit Blow, anything with Crit Blow suddenly finds poor fellows a little bit easier to get through. But the simple fact of the matter is, if you're rolling 8 attack dice, you're reasonably only going to be doing, even if you assume everything goes your way, you're only going to do 8 wounds to poor fellows. That's not a dead poor fellow unit, ever, pretty much. If you're doing something like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 wounds on the charge, Swarm Brothers, for example, looking at some really big numbers coming out from them and charges that are doing like 10 to 12 to 14 wounds we've seen before. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that poor fellows then struggle with, especially if they don't have people like High Sparrows cards in hand. But
Yeah. So the real key to a poor fellow-based army is the card Protection of the Father. Protection of the Father is the thing. Your opponent won't have many opportunities to be incredibly explosive against poor fellows, and if you can hold Protection of the Father for the right time when your opponent thinks they're going to destroy you and overrun and really open you up and start to gain activation advantage, and you can use it to deny that, then it can be very, very influential. That combat that they thought was going to be explosive and really open the game up for them actually just turns into another grind. And that's where poor fellows are worth way more than their 5-point price tag.
Yep. Definitely agree. So we see the clear up happening, and is this the first activation we see Joffrey? No, surely not. He's got an activation token on him. I'm guessing he hasn't been taken off. Yeah, we see swords from Varys. This makes sense. I'm guessing he's going to try and chop up Gregor.
At 7-3, Ereius really needs something to happen very soon. His problem is that his Kingsguard are now fully surrounded, and these crossbowmen are probably going to go to work on them. If he doesn't destroy the mountain very soon, he will be getting shot with Sundering in his rear, which is
he needs to kill him with this
dangerous
attack, really, to be honest. No worth the rot, that's 3 wounds. And there's a real possibility with the vulnerable token that he will fail another one. There we go, 4 dead, 4 wounds, back, smack. No Joffrey card. No Joffrey card. The mountain is dead. I mean, as things go, that was required. And now this is the key. This is the key. There's a 2-inch maneuver that they get here. The 2-inch... See, this is why I really disliked Deoxys' placement of his guard unit on last turn. Because the 2-inch maneuver that the Kingsguard can do here will take them out of line of sight for the guardsmen. It will mean that Deoxys has to invest resources into the guardsmen in order for them to be able to see Joffrey's unit.
That's true. He does still have a big choice himself. He still has a banner, so I think that the best thing he can do is be in the flank of the guardsmen while facing the crossbowmen. He does not want to leave his rear open to the crossbowmen, and he does not have to worry about the guardsmen seeing his rear.
Yep.
I would also... Oh, it looks like he looks to be retreating back towards his own side, which isn't where I want him to be aggressive into the dead space.
We'll see the move and see what he does with the move.
I would like them to be aggressive towards the crossbowmen.
No, it looks like he's aware of the arcs, so he is going to go... There we go.
He should face the crossbowman because in his own activation, he can, of course, take the free maneuver to begin with, so he can face whichever way he wants when he wants to charge. The most important part is not getting the extra negatives from the crossbowman shooting him, I think, right now.
Yeah, it looks like
he's only going to have to weather the one shot.
He's tentative about getting these guys into arc. No. That was the most interesting swivel I've ever seen. Yeah, okay, yeah, keep going, and yeah,
So he has 3 points worth of tokens again, which is not insignificant, but he is still bleeding 2 points a turn to Joffrey.
But he's gaining 1 point.
He is, yep, he's on a 3-2 advantage.
So I mean, it still goes 9-7 at the end of the round, and then that will end 11-10, assuming nothing dies and no tokens change hand.
The crossbowmen are incredibly difficult for him to ever charge. I would expect them to take a shot now to open up the distance between them, because the crossbowman dying is Ereius's best way into getting this game into drawing territory.
Yeah, because he could draw it on turn. He could
He
actually
would
win the
draw it
game.
on. He would draw it on turn 6, and he would have more units left on the board right now.
Yeah, he would have more points of units on the board.
If he can get into those crossbowmen and get a kill. The odds of it happening are, though, also quite low, mostly because of the guard captain. Again, the guard captain stops the spiking of that damage, means that the most wounds you can do is however many attacks you have plus 1. If he still has Tywin left, the use of Tywin onto this unit would be huge. And as much as I might have naysayed it should have been used earlier, it could well have a game-changing effect if he can turn off the guard captain this turn.
So we saw letters come out. Just a conservative Cersei letters. We yet to see Cersei actually influence anyone as well.
So it's interesting that he uses Cersei. I mean, like, presumably they are vocally stating who she's influencing, but that really obviously doesn't help the stream.
No.
If not, then it's a big oversight, because why are you not using Pycelle? Because the weakened token will have great value. But I expect that she's being used onto the Kingsguard. Although I'm trying to remember their rules, they can never have any negative morale. So I guess they should really be onto the poor fellows controlling the token, as that gives an opportunity for crowns to make them drop it.
Yeah. So
this has become a very cagey game all of a sudden, thanks to that big attack and the kill.
People hating on Starks in chat, and by the way, that's absolutely fine. Hating on certain types of Stark lists or Starks in general is okay by us, because we're fed up of seeing them. Just don't hate on Starks because they're Starks. Oh, what else? I mean, this poor fellow, what is this free activation?
Is Joffrey not holding the token?
No, he is, right? Oh, did he choose to drop it? No, you can't choose to drop it. He didn't fail the panic test.
He can choose not to.
No, you can't. The rules in the game mode, haven't got the game mode out actually, but the rules in the game mode specifically states that if a unit failing a panic check, where is it? I'll get the exact name of it here. Dance at Dragons. If a unit holding objective fails a panic check or is destroyed, one enemy unit that is engaged with claims the token. If there was no enemy engaged with that unit, you place it within 2. So you do have to claim it.
There's no May there. Not
from the shortened version there. I'll double check the full rulebook, obviously, because I had the shortened version of it there. But there is no May.
So they should be holding the token, which means that the poor fellows, in my mind, should be looking to block Joffrey's Kingsguard from being able to. That's Deoxys, obviously. Deoxys' Kingsguard from being able to charge into his own Kingsguard if he's aggressive into the crossbowman.
So the issue
that would mean that he wants to work out where he's going to end up and then try and block the flanking position of that position there.
The issue here being that you can't risk the poor fellows too much, because the crossbow shot and the Kingsguard together will kill you. Probably. You know, you're talking probably 3 or 4 hits from the crossbows, and then you're talking 8 hits. It's going to be 8 hits from the Kingsguard. Mind you, they're
So he
weakened.
seems to be retreating.
Solidifying this flank.
Which would be a position that you would be happy to take were it not for the fact that you're cruising towards a loss unless you can do something significant.
I guess the significant thing would be killing these guards. That's what he has to do. This unit of guardsmen over here, this is full health unit of guards with a guard captain, has to die, ideally in these 2 units' attacks this turn. That's looking unlikely.
Yeah, it is another unit that he can swing down in onto. Rather than the crossbowman, it's a much more likely charge for distance. He also gets the flank, and he can follow it up with an extra attack from the poor fellows. So yeah, now that I look at it, it is the better maneuver. He is still going to be hard pressed to get the kill, though, I think.
I would have liked to maneuver with the poor fellows, or with the token. Just push the poor fellows up and threaten this guy. Because there's a chance if these poor fellows try and charge that they fail. Right?
Of course. Yeah.
So he should have just moved the 2 inches forward. And if the guard run away, will the guard run away, you know?
But I guess his thoughts are there's no point in him killing this guardsman unit here if he loses the poor fellows in return.
True.
And like you say, between the Kingsguard and the Lannister crossbowmen, that was a likely situation to happen.
Yeah.
He would have to, but of course they still haven't activated, so he would have the opportunity to heal D3 in between. Plus, there is still the money bags on the table, so it would be a difficult push to get that unit killed. I think that the crowns is a very important zone right now for Ereius to force through some damage. If he can get one of these guard captain units to fail a panic check, then he will have a much, much bigger chance to force through enough damage. His problem is that if he takes the crowns, his opponent can take money bags in response later in the round, i.e. whenever he wants, to heal 3 wounds.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a longish charge here from Joffrey. Takes the free 2-inch maneuver, leaving him with a 5-inch charge.
That doesn't sound too likely.
Sorry, so it's a 7-inch charge with a 5 needed on the dice.
Right, yeah, okay. I thought that's what you meant, so that's why I assumed, but again, that's not great. It's not great odds, really. You know, a 3rd chance of making it. It's not terrible.
Deoxys is aware of the counter with the poor fellows into his Kingsguard flank. It not a very impactful charge, really, though, because of the fact that they don't have a token. But we are really in crunch time here. Any failed move, any bad position could really cost the game. We see a failed charge, and every panic check is really important dice roll. We'll see what we get. But a fail, for example, could be suddenly or a huge swing against Deoxys.
That's a pass, though. In fact, the odds are where it was a 3, I believe, because he's still within 6 of the weirwood. He might actually be within 6 of the corpse pile as well, maybe, but
they take the +1, but don't take the -1 because of their unit. Their rules.
Yeah.
Now this is interesting. Will Ereius choose to charge into the Kingsguard? I think not. I think he's still best collapsing down onto the Lannister guardsman. But killing Joffrey will have a much bigger impact if it can happen. expecting another activation after we see money bags get taken. I think we've just seen Ereius kind of delay and take that money bags. Interesting that he would rather have money bags than use the crowns to have an attempt at making somebody fail a panic check. And we see a shot into the Kingsguard, currently doing 3 wounds. Unless... did we see Wealth of the Rock, or is that still just sat on the table from earlier?
I think that's still sat on the table from earlier.
Yeah. Obviously, one of the main strengths of the Kingsguard is that their attack profile really doesn't weaken no matter how many wounds they're on. Even Joffrey alone is throwing out 8 attacks that hit on 2s. So they will remain impactful right up until the moment that they're dead. And this is a big play depending on where he's going to commit these units. The poor fellows possibly taking an action to charge the Kingsguard in the flank will set up, based on whether or not this unit is successful, he can decide what he will do with his own Kingsguard. It's looking like an increasingly risky maneuver that Deoxys chose to take on this 5+ charge and fail.
Yep.
The poor fellows don't have a great matchup into these Kingsguard. But with +1 to hit and +2 dice, he is rolling a lot of dice. His problem is that counterattack will really hurt him.
Yeah.
If Deoxys can make a lot of saves. Oh, wow. We see a lot of hits. This is going to be painful for somebody. It's currently a 4+ save. We'll see if we see any cards come down. If he has defensive cards, then Deoxys can really make this a non-issue. But if he doesn't, then it could be a really big roll. We see just the roll get made. I assume that we're going to see a counterattack get played, because if he's not playing anything else, then... And it looks like 4 wounds plus a vulnerable, making it 5 wounds. D3 blocked wounds. Interesting that he chooses to counterplot that card. The D3 blocked wounds could have been significant, but I actually think that leaving himself vulnerable would have been very significant too. We see the counterattack come down, and I think we're still waiting on 5 wounds. Oh no, sorry, that wasn't counterattack. That was 2 dice used for counterplot. So counterplot stops the card use. There are 5 wounds going through right now, and the unit is in a real dicey situation.
Yep.
The question is, what's his best banner to use? It's probably possibly Crit Blow and Sundering, do you think? Or do you think that Vulnerable and Weakened is the better choice?
Crit Blow Sundering, surely.
But he is weakened, so he can't expect much from the Crit Blow.
Sundering doesn't really give him anything. I don't like the vulnerable though. The vulnerable's not great, and the weakened is largely irrelevant anyway.
He's presumably he can't expect any damage from the panic test. So he needs to be able to do 3 wounds with the attack alone. Hitting on 2+, even after the rerolls for the charge and the rerolls for the weakened, means that really you should be expecting about 7 hits, 6 or 7. With a 3+ save, assuming he charges in the front, I think that the vulnerable is enough to force it through. But I think that the sundering plus the crit blow might have it marginally. I think that they're very, very similar in this situation, though.
This hurts me inside that Deoxys has had to do this movement here this turn.
Exactly. If Deoxys loses this game, it is because of the positioning of, and particularly the angle that he put the guardsman at when he took that last maneuver last round.
Yep.
If he just pivoted further around so he could see the Kingsguard and all the positions that the Kingsguard might end up in, then he would not have ended up in this whole situation, and he could have threatened to charge him in the rear at any given time he wanted.
Yeah, it would have been a much more
From both the front and the rear with the crossbowman and the and the guardsman would have made things far, far more difficult for the for Ereius, and would have stopped this whole chain of events. This game balances on an absolute knife edge, and it feels right now like it's swinging towards Ereius.
Yeah, I mean, Deoxys put a lot of faith in his mountain that rides not dying, and although we might think that that's a good idea, we were talking about the whole stream that, you know, the mountain that ride dying is actually quite an easy, common thing to happen. So, you know, it's all well and good what Deoxys was trying to do, but he needs to be more careful.
This is also a common problem of players thinking that they're ahead in the game and starting to take their actions more quickly, and possibly not thinking through the whole chain of events and how quickly a game can swing away from you. Oh, I've just realized the unit, because they control the objective, they already have Sundering and Vicious. So, of course, the 2 tokens are the better choice here.
Yeah. They also
will
take
take D3 wounds after the effect, but he already has that Sundering. So it's 4+ saves, and he's vulnerable, and he's currently very much dead. Even saving D3 wounds from I Am the King would not save him in that situation.
The game's over. 11-7 to Ereius.
He has now grabbed the 3rd token. He controls all 3, and there is no... there is a absolute outside chance that he can force the poor fellows over on this edge, which I hope that he put Cersei onto. He can crown zap him and have him drop it, but it will still be 10-7. Which, of course, means that the only thing he can really do is force Joffrey to drop. Crown zap Joffrey. It would be a 4+ morale with no negatives. It's not impossible. There is a 1 in 12 chance that he fails the test and has to drop it. He should also be taking D3 wounds right now, which I don't know if he is. Oh, there he is. There's the 1 wound. Means that he can actually die from the failed panic test.
Here's a one for you, Carlo.
I think he might have just used Tycho right now.
But do you use... So here's the good question. Do you turn and pivot your guard unit enough so you can see your opponent's Kingsguard unit in a maneuver, or do you try and not lose the game on a 1 in 12 chance? What would you take?
We have Heavy Roar for an extra -1. They can't be panicked, so...
They don't suffer negatives, do they?
Yeah, they don't.
Who's he using this on? It has to be Joffrey, otherwise he's lost. Was he use it on the... I
He
don't
might
know.
have used it on the poor fellows, but that doesn't change the game. He still ends the round and loses by the same margin.
So, if you're asking where we think the game ended, Bruce, it was in the moment he didn't turn his guards to face Joffrey. If he just turned his guards more so he could see Joffrey, he'd have been absolutely fine and could have charged Joffrey, held them up, and then that would have been it.
Yeah, a really, really small positional. In hindsight, it's a misplay. At the time, you call it an oversight. Until I call these plays which could have an effect on the game oversights, and when they do have an effect on the game in hindsight, they become misplays. Lots of people make oversights. The question is, do they then go on to become misplays? And this one really, really turned into a huge misplay, it seems.
Just ask them if they're good for interviews, and then we'll head over to the Assault on Riverrun TTS server. Cool. Right. Hello.
Hi.
Right then. So Ereius, well done. Well done on your win there.
Thanks. Cheers.
Was that a 7-point
was a
swing?
tough game.
7-point swing in the last round.
Yeah,
Yes.
It was crazy.
Yes.
Question first to you, Deoxys. You know me, I'm going to have a go. Your guards
Yeah.
unit and the pivot that you made so you couldn't see Joffrey's unit, was that intentional that you thought that the mountain would survive, or did you just oversee and forget that the mountain sometimes just dies?
Oh no, I thought I could see him, but I guess it didn't matter in the end. I never had the chance to attack him from there.
Yeah. Do you think by that guards unit not being able to, but basically with Joffrey being in the flank and the guards unit not being able to get involved, do you think that's really what did it?
Yeah, actually, I forgot about the King's Guard unit.
Oh wow.
I forgot they hadn't activated, and the fact that it was going to be 3 points to the loss. Also, was surprised at how powerful that poor fellow attack was.
Yeah. The
That,
Kingsguard die.
I didn't expect all of it.
The Kingsguard really do die when they get attacked in the flank, I found. Especially if there's any tokens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was digging for my defensive cards, but only pulled one.
Yeah. Okay then. Ereius, your your mountain that rides ran away.
Yeah. Hey,
What do you? I mean,
hit by by a train.
what do you
Yeah.
Why did you select the unit composition that you went for? The two poor fellows, the Mountains Men unit, and the Kingsguard. Why did you go for that composition?
Because Joffrey's cards give you too many panic tokens, so at least you filter the panic down. You filter the panic. The only thing that I'm slightly disappointed that I did at unit creation was Dario. Okay, today he did a miracle, but I think Brian would have done better because at least morale would have been with Stalwart would have been on a 5. So that would have the whole army quite in a good spot with morale. But today was one of the few moments that I had the opportunity to charge with Dario without having a weakened token.
And it hurts.
I did a mistake there. I should have rerolled everything since I had all those 6s to maybe get a couple more and just outright blow up the unit too. That was a mistake from my end.
Okay. Now,
but
yeah.
Yes, tell me.
I was going to say the game looked very comfortable for Deoxys going into, except that last round. It looked very comfortable. Did you feel like you were in? Did you feel like you were worried?
Yes, a lot. I mean, I was always under. Unit-wise, activation-wise. His Cersei was worrying me. I played the whole game without Varys. gave bait and left the Kingsguard to take the NCO objective. That was something that I was seeing in the deployment, and I said, okay, if I'm gonna leave him the spot, his last unit is Kingsguard, and he's gonna go for the objective. So that was a calculated risk to play without Varys. That's why I left that flank open. So he takes it with Kingsguard, and for them to play, he has to bend the banners with swift advance with different maneuver. So that was calculated to minimize the Kingsguard power. But yes, those rolls, when I lost the objective on a 1-1 with the Kingsguard myself, that made me lose 2 points and made him gain 2 points. And made him I lost 2 points basically. So that was bad. I mean, the points were 7-4 this turn. They could have been 6-5 with that failed panic. So yes, I was worried. I didn't quite understand why he charged in the last moment, needing a 5. I think that was the mistake that really cost him the game. And obviously then I had to take the opportunity.
Yeah,
the
definitely.
poor fellows with I Am the King, they become beasts. So
they do. They're really scary.
So then it was just a matter of finishing off his Kingsguard, getting all the objectives, and closing the game.
Yeah.
But yes, I was definitely a lot worried.
Okay. Deoxys then. Did you that charge from Joffers? Was that a calculated risk that you made, or did you just kind of throw everything into one basket?
Let's say it was a miscalculated risk. I thought I needed to get a point. But just looking back at it, I was like, it was going to end up as 11-10, not 10-10. That's why I was, really pushing to go aggressive and get something, get a point, or to drop some points. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Just a mistake.
Yeah, and one thing we always say is, if you've ever watched any of our streams before, you win and lose games on mistakes. It's as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was a good game to watch. It was certainly interesting. Carlo, did you have any questions or queries or insights you wanted to ask the players or anything like that?
No, yeah, I mean, the real question on my mind was that Kingsguard question. And yeah, it's really interesting that we were looking at the game sort of trending towards this 11-10 win to Deoxys. It seemed that you were in the defensive position, but obviously if you see that you're trending towards a loss, you're looking to make big plays, you're looking to make really influential things happen. So of course that matters. So I guess the question is, Ereius, you're going into the final now. You'll be playing either Brett Lampfer with his Starks, or you'll be playing into a Lannister matchup. Which do you think that you're going to prefer to see?
I think I already played against Brett. Is it possible to play again? My last round, if I'm not mistaken, it was against him.
I think it must have been a different Brett.
That's impossible because you're both unbeaten, so you can't.
Okay.
Different Brett.
I think you played him in a different tournament.
Okay, my bad. Sorry. No, Starks are hard. They hit hard, but we'll try our best to counter his many activations. It seems like it's quite popular nowadays to play the 10 activations. We'll see how that goes for both of us.
So you think it's more likely that you'll meet the Starks, and would you rather that than another High Sparrow or Lannister kind of mirror matchup?
Well, yes, personally, I'd rather play another faction. I mean, it's more interesting to play another faction than the same. Personally, that's how I see it. And Lannister and Stark, it's a good rivalry,
The age-old rivalry, right from back when the starter box started, and yet somehow it's still one of the most interesting matchups, and still happens to be right up at the very top of the table. So that's really good to see.
Yes, they are. I think as factions, they are very complete factions. Now Baratheons will have a good run for it as well. I'm sure of that in time. But for now, Starks and Lannisters are in a very good spot, so it's not something uncommon to see both in the finals. We'll see. This scenario favors the Stark, so the other player will have an advantage over the Lannister opposition, because he can get the tokens with the wolves and just stay back, while his elite units keep the rest of the army busy. So this scenario favors the Starks.
What just a kind of follow-up question to you both then. Both playing Lannisters. This tournament has slightly different rules to other tournaments that we've seen, in that it allows the Kickstarter exclusives and all the extra stuff that was brought along with it. Now, neither of you have looked to any of the new stuff. The main real thing being the Clegane Butcher, right? But you both have looked at the Mountain That Rides. Do you think the Mountain That Rides is above the power level of other things? Do you think he's just, you take him because he's a 4-point activation and activations matter, or what? So Deoxys first, I guess. Why do you take the Mountain That Rides?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd never used him before. It looked fun to use, but I guess all of those things, like, he's a decent combat unit, and just another activation of 4 points makes it, easy to get 8 activation to a Lannister list.
Yeah. And what
It's a
about
reliable dog killer, I'd say.
Oh god, yeah. If you ever it's in charge range with the dog, the dog's dead, pretty much. What about yourself, Ereius? Why do you take the Mountain That Rides?
Well, in Lannisters, everything is expensive, just like Deoxys said. So yes, with 10 points, having both Kingsguard and him, it's quite a good value good points for the value they give you. Also, with Joffrey, he gets a boost. Personally, the Behemoth, I like him with Tyrion, but I wanted to avoid the Tyrion list. But with Joffrey, the Mountain That Rides becomes quite powerful. In fact, he butchered my Mountainsman with that.
Oh yeah, you will obey me. Yeah.
You will obey me.
Another good combo I found that I quite enjoyed.
So I mean that card alone already makes the Mountain That Rides a valuable option in this list. And then the fact that you can save the 3 wounds when you miss your saves and that stuff, it's additional candy.
Yeah, definitely.
To save them. But yes, mostly the main reason I believe for every Lannister player to choose him over the Behemoth would be the activation for 4 points.
Yeah.
And he's a scary model to fight. I mean, sometimes I play with free folk here in my community, and even with free folk, I still don't like facing him.
That's fair
even
enough.
though I have Tempest.
What I've done is just as a thank you for allowing us to stream, I've just dropped a load of dice in, a different. I've just dropped like loads of it accidentally, but there are loads of dice there, different faction dice, so things like High Sparrow, Clegane. They were all designed by Space Cowboy, who is a frequent on our channel. He's been in a lot of tournaments. He's always playing, looking for games. And I thought, just as a little thank you to you guys for letting us stream, you can have these nice dice if you want to use them. If you got your High Sparrow, I know you both play High Sparrow, right? So, there's some nice High Sparrow dice there you can use.
Let me check if I get another double one.
Brilliant. But thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot. Great
two.
game.
Double 2. I got double 2.
Take that. The next one will be a double 3. So we'll catch you, Ereius, in the final, maybe, and we'll see you smash it out. And Deoxys, obviously, commiserations, and we'll see you maybe in your final game as well. And all the best of luck in not just this tournament, any other tournaments you've been entered into as well. Okay, guys?
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot for your time, guys.
Have a good day. Good night.
You too. Right, guys, that's that one done. Game is over. Players have been spoken to. Dice have been thrown onto the table. Carlo, was there anything else you wanted to say to round that up?
No, it's a really brilliant game. It's really interesting to see 3 Lannister players in the top 4 at this tournament. Shows that when they're fielded in high numbers, they can do well. What's interesting is that the mountain that rides, he both helps them be a little bit more efficient, but more importantly, he seems to make them far more popular as a choice. And I think that their popularity is more important than actually them being that much more powerful. They seem to have been completely unselected, a very, very unpopular faction in the NRG tournament, and also in the Boards and Swords TTS event, which neither of which allow Kickstarter units. As soon as he was allowed into the Assault on Riverrun, their popularity shoots up, and we see tons and tons of Lannister players. Whether it's because people think that his power is enough to make the faction better, or just the novelty factor of being able to use him and people wanting to try that out, it's hard to know where that balance is. We'll be looking at those results and see just how much better the Lannisters have performed. But really, seeing these huge swings is not indicative of like really where the game balance is. So if you want to find out where the game balance is, then I'd say join the Builders League, where there will be a completely even split of all different factions. You will get to see many more matchups, a lot more interesting games rather than a lot of mirrors. And hopefully we'll see some really interesting things play out, and we'll learn a lot more from that style of play.
Yep, definitely. So just to kind of end the stream here, remember to keep heading over to a Song of Ice and Fire stats.com. That's ASOIAF-stats.com. Submit your games, see the tournament results, see all the lists, check the faction ratings, check the commander ratings, all that. I believe Carlo's got something in store coming up in the next couple of days, relating to how the site looks and kind of like some new bits of functionality as well alongside that. So stay tuned and check it out when you can. Then on top of all that, we've of course got the Builders League that Carlo said there, the first Builders League. Descriptions and everything can be found on the site as well, and I will drop the Discord in chat that you can go and join if you want to join the tournament. Just join the Discord, message Z4Carlo, and you'll get yourself some commanders to try and make some lists with. So yes, I think aside from that, obviously follow, subscribe if you haven't already. You check out the merch that we've got underneath. Daryl will kill me if I don't keep pointing that out. And generally guys, we hope you have a great time. Hope you enjoy your Song of Ice and Fire.